Welcome back to the second episode of 24 Sports News, where we talk everything South League. So, let's just get right into it. We're gonna talk about Week 2 matchups, and upcoming Week 3 matchups. By what I mean by Week 2 is the Week 2 results of the game. So, we're gonna talk about rankings, standings, everything. So let's get into it. We're gonna start with the standings. We have the Southland division over here, where we have Lamar at the top, the only undefeated team left in this division at 2-0. They beat VMI and then they beat Houston Christian this week. So yeah, they're 2-0 with a great point differential. I'm gonna be honest, 19-point differential. They've won at home and away, so proving they can go on the road and win. Then we have Incarnate Word, 1-0 in conference play, but they did lose to UTSA this week. That is why. And yeah, so they're ranked 8th still. They didn't fall out for losing. So then we have Northwestern State. They are 1-0 in conference play, beating Furman, but they did lose to Minnesota this week. They are 1-1. Still a positive point differential, which is very impressive, I'm going to be honest, for them. So then we have Houston Christian Huskies. They are 1-1. They've played 2 conference games. They haven't played out a conference game yet. They're 1-1. They have beat, who'd they beat? They beat Samford, and then they lost to Lamar this week. Southeastern, they are also 1-1 in conference play, 1-1 overall. Positive point differential for them because they had a 3-point loss to Wofford. So that was no 3-point loss to ETSU. They beat Wofford this week, so that got them to 1-1. Then East Texas A&M, they are 0-1 in conference play, losing to Mercer this week, and they're also 0-2 because they lost to SMU. Then Stephen F. Austin, they are ranked number 3, but they're at the bottom of the standings because they lost. The first conference game they played, they lost. So, but they did beat Houston the week 1, so they're 1-1. McNeese, 0-1 conference play and 0-2 overall, and Nichols 0-1 in conference play, losing to Incarnate Word, and they are, it says 0-2, I messed that up. They're 1-1, they beat Texas State, but they're still at the bottom. Yeah, so that'll do it for Southland Division. Let's move on to the Southern Division, where we have the Citadel standing atop the rankings. They are number 2 in the actual rankings. This is the standings. 2-0 in conference play. That's why they're at the top, because conference wins decides standings. A fantastic point differential right here. Like, look at this, 45-19. That is their defense playing outstanding. So yeah, they're 2-0 overall, which is why they're number 2. The only person in front of them is Mercer. They're also undefeated. So number 4, East Tennessee State. They are 1-0 in conference play. They beat Southeastern week 1, but they lost to Tennessee this week. Chattanooga also 1-0 because they beat Stephen F. Austin this week. And for the undefeated, rounding out undefeated conference teams is Mercer at 1-0, and they're 2-0 overall because they beat Troy week 1 and they beat East Texas A&M this week. So Western Carolina haven't even played a conference game yet, so they're 0-0 in conference play, which is why they're right in the middle, and they're 1-1 overall. They beat Wake Forest this week, so look for them if they win this week against Chattanooga, look for them to make it into the rankings because they're probably next in line, or Nichols, one of them too. Wofford is 0-1 in conference play. They lost. Who'd they lose to? Wofford lost to Southeastern, and they're 0-2 overall. Furman 0-1 in conference play when they lost to Northwestern State week 1, and they lost to Coastal Carolina this week. They're 0-2. VMI 0-1 in conference play also. They lost to Lamar, And they also have they lost this week to Virginia Tech, which was a rivalry game, actually, believe it or not. So they're 0-2. Samford, they are also they're 0-2 in conference play. They haven't played out a conference game yet, and they lost both Houston Christian and the Citadel. So they're 0-2 overall also. So yeah, that'll do it for all the standings. Let's get into the rankings. So number 1 and number 2, both undefeated, Mercer and the Citadel. Very impressive. The Citadel, they could make a case for being number 1. Beat Samford and killed McNeese. So Mercer hasn't been too impressive yet. They barely escaped East Texas A&M, and they beat Troy by 1 score. Steve F. Austin, they don't really drop very much. They lost to a ranked team. And so did ETSU also lost, so you couldn't put ETSU ahead of them. Southeastern, they won, so they'll move up a spot, but they will not move up more than that because they did lose to ETSU. So ETSU is going to be in front of them. Lamar moves up a spot with their win. They're 2-0, but committee not very convinced with their pretty ugly win against VMI week 1. They're going to have to show the committee what they're made of this week. Chattanooga had a very impressive win against Stephen F. Austin. They move up only 1 spot. Can't really put them above Lamar. And Incarnate Word drops to number 8 after losing to UTSA. So, yeah. Now we're going to talk about our week 2 matchups from this week. First, we have McNeese, and they went on the road to UL, and they put up a good fight, 14-17. They're going to lose, but pretty impressive. Jake Strong having 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not much running game for them, only 28 total yards. Not very impressive, but Josh Jackson having a good game, 61 yards and a touchdown. Jonathan Harris also getting a touchdown, so pretty good. They also had an interception, so we're gonna move on to Furman at Coastal Carolina. Very low scoring, not a very competitive game, to be honest. 7-9, Furman loses. Trey Heaton, though, had a great game. He went for 244 yards and a touchdown. Not any interceptions this week after he threw 2 last week. Not much on the ground. Gavin Hall having 26 yards on 6 attempts. But Ethan Harris, 109 yards and a touchdown for them. Pryor also has 48 yards. Hamilton, 34. So very impressive receiving. Furman does have a tough matchup against Lamar this week, so we'll see how they stack up. Northwestern State at Minnesota, they lose 10-14, but it is very tough. Big Ten Power 4 school. Only losing by 4 is impressive because Northwestern State looking pretty good to start the season out. They have Louisiana Tech, so that's definitely a winnable game for them. And they have that win over Furman also. So, Abram Johnston with 141 yards and a touchdown, no interceptions. Myon Hicks, 37 yards on 10 attempts. And he also had 52 yards receiving and a receiving touchdown, which was their only touchdown. Yeah, that's about it. Cook with 2 sacks, though, and they had an interception, so pretty good from them. Let's move on to VMI at Virginia Tech. VMI, They had a good game against Lamar. I don't really know what happened here. I guess a bigger team in Virginia Tech losing 24-6. Yeah, Virginia Tech kind of just ran up the score against them. Colin Shannon having 211 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions, probably what kept him out of this one. Leo Bowling, though, with 50 yards on the ground, pretty impressive. And Morgan McFall with 50 yards, and Owen Sweeney with 121 yards and a touchdown. It was a really long touchdown, too. You have to go watch it. Yeah, and Burnett had a sack and an interception, so good week for him. Now we'll move to Incarnate Word at UTSA. Incarnate Word does lose 24-10. Not very inspiring for them after they grinded out a win against Nick Goles last week. So we'll see what the future holds for them. E.J. Colson had 149 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. He wins the starting job over Robert Torres. He was the starter last week, but E.J. Colson, they're going to go with him instead. He also had 29 yards on the ground for them, and Jamison Garcia, I think. Yeah, he had 75 yards and a touchdown, and Jones 36 yards, Spears 18. So had a good game passing, but couldn't really get much done against UTSA's defense. They had an interception and only 1 sack, so let's move on to Western Carolina at Wake Forest. Western Carolina gets a low-scoring win here, 10-6 after their loss to Appalachian State. Bennett Judy with only 86 yards. They got most of their work done on the ground. Cameron Reed, 61 yards. Bennett Judy, 18 yards. Josiah Thomas, 38 yards, passing their highest. So not much done in the passing game. But defense, they had a total of 5 sacks. 4 people, 5 sacks. Good defensive game by them. Nick Goles at Texas State. Nick Goles wins 13-7 with a touchdown and 2 field goals. Deuce Hogan had 143 yards and a touchdown. Not much done on the ground. Only about 30 yards, so not very impressive. But Everett Hunter with 43 yards, Solo Lewis 34 yards. And so, yeah, they had a good game. Solo Lewis also gets a touchdown, so they had good passing. Mason with the sack, and, yeah, they had a fumble recovery also. So now we have Southeastern at Wofford. Southeastern goes to Wofford and gets the win, 13-6. Carson Camp with 147 yards. Whitaker takes a step back this week with only 98 yards for Wofford. So had a rough game. Whitaker did have 49 yards rushing, though, which was the most out of everybody in this game. Jadon Henry, a surprise, honestly. Only 29 yards on the ground after he had a great game against ETSU last week. So that was kind of shocking. Same with Jackson Anderson for Wofford, only 11 yards after he was top 3 last week. Tristan Goodley for Southeastern had 65 yards, and then against C.J. Adams for Wofford had another good game, 49 yards. Wofford had a few sacks also, and a fumble recovery. I don't know what really happened there. They could have capitalized on that. So kind of disappointing. They really had a chance at the win there, but couldn't really pull it out. ETSU goes on the road to Tennessee. Very tough opponent. They only lose by 3, 17-14. Cade McNamara, 211 yards, not a single touchdown. Passing, that's because Devontae Houston had both touchdowns on the ground, 68 yards total. So very impressive game from him. Floyd had 96 yards, and Kareem Page 38 yards. So obviously no touchdowns passing, because they don't really need to with a running back like Houston. So East Texas A&M at Mercer. Hard for East Texas A&M to get the win here, but they put up a good fight going on the road at the number 1 team. 14-21 they lose. Braden Atkinson, 215 yards. Ron Peace had a great game for East Texas A&M, 203 yards. Both quarterbacks had 2 touchdowns. Tyrell Coard with a surprisingly good game with less attempts than C.J. Miller. Had 4 more rushing yards, 45, and C.J. Miller had 41. C.J. Miller does pick up a touchdown, though, so that's good for him. Braden Smith with 93 yards and a touchdown. Another great game from him. Harrison for East Texas A&M, 89 yards and a touchdown. Very impressive by him. Tanner Harrison had a great game for East Texas A&M. Yeah, Kendall Harris also with a good game, 45 yards. And the running back, KJ Schenkel, with 39 yards for East Texas A&M. So we'll move on to the Citadel at Samford. The Citadel had a road game this time, but they do get the win, 21-19. Samford put up a great fight there at the end, but Quincy Crittenden with almost 300 yards, 293 for Samford and 2 touchdowns, which is very impressive. I don't know how this team's 0-2. Their offense is insane. Quentin Hayes for the Citadel, 183 yards and 2 touchdowns. Pretty good by him, but he also does add 18 yards on the ground. So, and Sebastian Boyle, only 10 yards, more of a pass-heavy game we had. Jaden Gibson for Samford, another great game, 102 yards and a touchdown. Javante Graves-Billups, though, for Citadel, had a great game. 81 yards and a touchdown, really long touchdown, too. Calvin Jones, which was a surprise here for Samford, 80 yards and a touchdown. Great from him. Not really expecting that. Braylon North with 59 yards and a touchdown. We were kind of expecting that after he had about the same stat line last week. And Maddox McKim, 44 yards for Samford. Citadel also picks up a fumble, which helped them. And a few sacks also. 3 sacks for them. No, 2 sacks for them. Then we have number 7, Lamar at Houston Christian. Lamar goes into Houston Christian, gets the win, 24-7. Robert Coleman with 184 yards and 2 touchdowns for Lamar. But Jake Weir, only 61 yards and an interception for him, so not very impressive. But Major Bowden for Lamar had 63 yards on the ground, so which is very impressive for him. And so not very much passing. Devin Gibbs for Lamar had 55 yards, the big tight end, and also picks up a touchdown. And Jaden Gerard had a jet sweep touchdown for them. Only 14 yards for him total, though. Lamar also gets 2 sacks and an interception. Ronnie Hamrick with a sack and an interception, the safety. So I'm very impressive from them on the defensive side. And the last game was the game of the week, Stephen F. Austin at Chattanooga. Chattanooga goes into Stephen F. Austin and wins 13-10. Very impressive. Sam Vidlak actually had a great game despite the result. 239 yards and a touchdown, no interceptions. Camden Orth only 128 yards and a touchdown. They got most of their work done on the ground too. With Jaden Durant, 59 yards on the ground, and their backup, Ingram, 10 yards. So about, 69 yards on the ground for them total. Kendall Harris for Stephen F. Austin, 117 yards and a touchdown. Gerard Ademo, the tight end for Stephen F. Austin, 55 yards. And for Chattanooga, Marcel Quick, 36 yards, was their leading receiver. And on defense, Jamar Jones, Defensive Player of the Week, 2 sacks and a forced fumble. And Dickinson also has 2 sacks for Chattanooga. So, that'll do it for week 2. Those are all the matchups there. So, also, we'll get to the passing leaders, rushing leaders, receiving. Our leaders for passing this week, Quincy Crittenden with 293 yards and 2 touchdowns. Trey Heaton, second, 244 yards and a touchdown. Sam Vidlak, 239 yards and a touchdown. So those were your passing leaders. Rushing, we have Devontae Houston, 68 yards and 2 touchdowns. Major Bowden for Lamar, he had 63 yards, didn't have a touchdown though. And then third, Camry Reed, Western Carolina, had 61 yards and a touchdown. For receiving, number 1, Owen Sweeney for VMI, 121 yards and a touchdown. Kind of a surprise, especially the result of that game. Kendall Harris for Stephen F. Austin, 117 yards and a touchdown. And Ethan Harris for Furman had 109 yards and a touchdown. All of those teams lost that are in the receiving. Same with passing. All of those teams lost this week, which is kind of weird. And Defensive Player of the Week, Jamar Jones for Chattanooga, 2 sacks and a fumble. So yeah, that'll do it for our Week 2 recap. Now we'll move on to our Week 3 games. We have Samford at Jacksonville State. This is a rivalry game between them, both of them in the state of Alabama, obviously. I expect Jacksonville State to get the win here, but it will be close, trust me. Just because it is a rivalry game. Samford hungry for the first win of the season also. Next game is VMI at Navy. 2 military schools going at it here. I expect Navy to get the win, especially they have just better players and stuff, like higher overall. I expect Navy to get the win, like 10 points, 7 points, a touchdown maybe. So yeah, I expect Navy to get the win here at home. Next is Northwestern State at Louisiana Tech. This is another rivalry game between these two teams. I expect Louisiana Tech to get the win. Actually, Northwestern State's gonna win. I think so, because they've been hot lately. They beat Furman at home. They went to Minnesota and only lost by 4 points. So, in Louisiana Tech, they're not a very good team. So, I expect Northwestern State to get the win. Next, we have number 4, ETSU at Middle Tennessee. I expect ETSU to get the win on the road at Middle Tennessee, just because Middle Tennessee is not very good. And ETSU, coming off the loss to Tennessee, I think they'll be ready to go here against Middle Tennessee. Next is Furman at number 6, Lamar. This one's pretty easy. Lamar is going to win. Furman, just not a very good team. They lost to Coastal Carolina. Really disappointing, just overall game from them in that game. And not a very good game against Northwestern State. 2 interceptions, not very impressive. I think Lamar is going to win, especially coming off a great win against Houston Christian, beating them by like 17 points on the road. So next is number 8, Incarnate Word at McNeese. Incarnate Word will win. I can put money on that one, even though you can't, because this isn't real. Incarnate Word will get the win. McNeese is just not it this year. They got blown out week 1, and they lost to Louisiana last week, even though they put up a fight, but don't let that fool you. Incarnate Word's going to win. East Texas A&M is going to play at Nichols. Nichols really hungry for their first conference win after losing to Incarnate Word week 1. And they also might be up next for a top 8 ranking. So they really want this win. East Texas A&M also really wants a win because they start the season off 0-2. And they did put up a good fight against Mercer and only lost by like 8 points to SMU. So this is going to be a good game, actually. I'm really excited for it. Next, we have Wofford at number 1, Mercer. Wofford 0-2, but they're still one of the best 0-2 teams out there. But number 1, Mercer, they're going to get the win here, no matter how bad their defense might be, just because they were not very impressive against East Texas A&M. But yeah, Wofford, their offense not very impressive last week. I think they'll get the Mercer will get the win here. Western Carolina at Chattanooga. Chattanooga. I want to say Chattanooga, but I think Western Carolina is going to get the win here. On the road, Chattanooga doesn't have the best stadium environment and stuff. We'll see how that plays. But I think Western Carolina is going to go into Chattanooga and win this. And then when they win this, Chattanooga will fall out the rankings and Western Carolina is going to get that next spot. I guarantee it. Well, I don't guarantee it, actually. Don't listen to me. But yeah, Western Carolina is going to win. Next, we have number 5, Southeastern at number 3, Stephen F. Austin. Stephen F. Austin lost at home last week, so I think they're going to lose to Southeastern. This is a good game. 2 ranked teams. I think Southeastern is going to win on the road. Stephen F. Austin, they might be a little down in the dumps, after losing at home. So I think Southeastern is going to be like, you know what? Chattanooga did this, we can do this, and they're going to win. Last we have number 2, the Citadel at Houston Christian. This is our game of the week. I didn't want to give the game of the week to Southeastern and Stephen F. Austin because they already been on it twice. They each already been on it, so I give it to the Citadel and Houston Christian. I think the Citadel is going to win. Houston Christian showed some flaws against Lamar, especially at home. So I think the Citadel is going to get the win here in the game of the week. So thank you for watching. And this was 24 Sports News episode 2, where we cover everything South League.